Now let's discuss about startup frames. You can think of startup frames as the cost you have to pay in order to put the damaging part of the move on the screen. Here you see Scorpion's back one move requiring 14 frames before it can actually damage Geras. If you look at the animation, it can be seen that during the startup phase, your character prepares to attack the opponent. To make our discussion a bit intuitive, we will define speed as to how quickly the damaging part of the move appears on the screen. The fewer the startup frames, the faster the move, and vice versa. For our convenience and as a reference for future videos, we will categorize moves according to their startup frames as follows. Moves having a startup of 6 to 11 frames will be considered fast. Mostly you will find highs, crouching and standing jabs as well as throws falling in these categories. Then come the medium speed moves which have a startup of 12 to 17 frames, and mostly mids and lows fall in this category. Lastly, we have slow moves whose startup frames are beyond 17, and mostly overheads, launchers and projectiles fall in this category. Considering this and the discussion of move types in 9th episode, the most favorable moves will be those having a mid move type with a fast startup speed and adequate range. Fast mids having good range are considered the best of both worlds, as the enemy cannot avoid them by ducking. Their fast speed ensures that they don't get interrupted easily, and a good range makes the move quite useful during footsies. In Mortal Kombat 11, not many characters have fast, long-range mids for balance reasons. A couple of notable examples include Cassie's back 2 having almost round start range and only 11 frames startup. Similarly, Joker's forward one also have 11 frame startup with a very good range. From a practical implementation point of view, the first important point to note about startup frames is that they tell you why you should ideally use a move at a spacing exactly equal to the range of the move, hitting the opponent with just its tip. It means that using a faster, closer ranged move at close spacing, like a jab, will beat a slower move having a longer range. As an example, here we see that Sub-Zero's forward 4 move has a lot of range but also a large number of startup frames. Scorpion can easily interrupt it using a standing jab by timing it correctly. We see that when a move interrupts another move during its startup frames, it is known as counter and a notification for that is displayed on the screen. All of this can happen mostly if you don't know the optimal spacing for your move, which was meant for a different spacing, and while you were in the startup frames of that move, the enemy managed to time his move and hit you during that. Secondly, startup frames along with the range of the move also affects the choice of the move during neutral as well as when you get a frame advantage over the enemy. Let's see what happens when Shang Tsung uses his forward 2 move during neutral. Range of Shang Tsung's forward 2 move is defined by the red line you see on the screen, with a startup of 17 frames. Now this is an excellent footsie's range, and ideally you should use it during neutral only when you have this much spacing. Now using it at a closer range will enable Rambo to interrupt it using a faster move like back 3, which has a startup of only 12 frames and results in a counter. A more decent choice for Shang Tsung at this spacing would be to use a down 4, which is actually made for such a close spacing and will beat out Rambo's attempt to counter you. Lastly, startup frames also help you choose a move once you get a frame advantage over the enemy. This is a part we will discuss in detail when we get to the block advantage and hit advantage section. But just as a food for thought, I will give you an example of a setup or trap move. Setup moves are best used after you have gained some advantage by setting up a situation in your favor on the screen. Here we see Aaron Black's Nether Beast trap having a startup of 59 frames, which is almost a second. Using this move directly in neutral at any spacing will enable the opponent to interrupt it even with the moves on the slower side of spectrum. A much better use of such a setup move will be to special cancel it after a string or a move which gives you ample frame advantage over the enemy. Here using the back 222 move of Aaron Black gives you 35 frames advantage, after which if you cancel it into the trap, you are able to safely place it on the ground. We will discuss all about special cancelling in the cancel advantage section in a later video. So, closing our discussion, in fighting games, the frames you gain or lose during an encounter can be considered as a currency or money the game gives you according to the frame data. During neutral, the game gives you free money, so be sure to spend it wisely, keeping in view the spacing and frame data, and only press buttons when you are sure that it will be worth it. Once you get a frame advantage, consider it as a reward the game gives you for doing something good, like blocking a move, hitting the opponent, or catching the opponent whiffing a move. Take those frames and spend them on the best possible move to keep getting more frames over the enemy as a reward. That was it for today's episode. If you like my content, be sure to subscribe to my channel and leave your feedback in the comment section. Till next time, it is Mini Ninja signing out.